Auburn fans are crucial in getting key guys like Cam Coleman on campus.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're going to talk recruiting with Locked On Recruiting Insider Brian Smith in just a moment. A little bit different of a show. We're going to hop into a special interview with Brett Whiteside with On to Victory, as well as Auburn five-star wide receiver Cam Coleman. Brett, there's been so much talk about NIL and the impact that it has on college sports right now. But as far as Auburn alumni and boosters, what kind of role have they played in supporting specifically Auburn's NIL efforts so far?
Yeah, well, I think, right now, Auburn fans and boosters are 100% where our revenue is coming from to be able to support these great athletes like Cam. I think when NIL got started a few years ago, the idea was that businesses and royalty deals from jersey sales and that sort of thing is where NIL would come from. Never did the folks that began to allow name, image, and likeness to occur would they have fathomed this new industry of NIL collectives. But when fans start getting competitive and they want to win and they want to support their athletes, they figure out a way to do it. So, I was talking to a guy that manages a lot of collectives. They pay out over $100 million a year in NIL payments for a bunch of collectives, and less than 2% are coming from businesses, right? So over 98% in at least all the collectives he works with, and that's pretty close to us too, is coming directly from supporters, from fans. And so it's instrumental. We've tried to provide many different ways and opportunities for folks to engage with us that they can have a direct impact on our athletes like Cam.
Yeah. Cam, there's a lot of talk about NIL impacting the culture of teams. How are NIL deals influencing the focus of Auburn student athletes internally?
NIL, it's a great opportunity for us, us student athletes, to grow our brand. But in order to get NIL, you have to play good. You have to play good, and really, it's really just a great addition to college football. And it's really not a focus. We're worried about winning games, getting close as a brotherhood, and it's really just focus on one day at a time.
Sure. Cam, what Brett just said about so much of the money going through these collectives, and it's the same with Auburn, is coming from the fans, the guys, men and women that are going to be sitting in Jordan-Hare Stadium cheering for you and supporting you. That's got to be cool that these folks that are loving on you from afar are willing to support Auburn athletes like yourself with their wallets, with their finances. That's got to be a cool feeling.
Oh, it's definitely a blessing. It's definitely a blessing because it's a great blessing from all the donors, and I like to meet someone face to face, but it's really a blessing.
Yeah, I'm sure. Brett, as far as the legal concerns with Auburn athletes participating in NIL deals, and last time you came on the show, Brett, there's actually been new laws that have come, and we'll jump into those in a second. But with this ever-changing landscape of the legality of NIL, are there any kind of hurdles in regards to Auburn athletes benefiting from NIL?
Really, I think the hurdles are just the education piece for the fans, right? This is a brand new way of supporting Auburn, right? Typically, folks are supporting Auburn through buying tickets and through making donations through Tigers Unlimited or whatever that might be. And this new way of supporting through name, image, and likeness is just brand new. So I think the obstacle is really just the education piece, that everyone feel really comfortable that this is perfectly permissible. This is perfectly within what's allowed for our student athletes to engage in, what a donor or a fan is allowed to do. So we're lockstep with our university and to the level allowable to make sure that we're not doing anything that would jeopardize these athletes' eligibility. So our role as the collective is to provide that mechanism for fans to pool their resources, for us to then issue contracts to the men and women that are student athletes. We've done NIL deals with over 400 student athletes from 16 different sports here at Auburn.
Yeah.
And so it's our role to issue those contracts to the athletes and then to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, right? This is one of Cam's requirements for his name, image, and likeness contract. him coming in the office every month and signing autographs. Cam, you mentioned wanting to be able to interact with some donors. You're going to do that the morning of A-Day.
Yes, sir.
Morning of A-Day. You're going to be present. It's only open to Own the Victory members. You're going to get to have that opportunity to meet them face-to-face, sign autographs, and thank them personally for supporting you and your teammates. So
I written some written letters because that was one of my requirements. And it was like, thank you. But I'd like to meet them face-to-face.
That's right. Yeah, Cam comes in the office every month. He might write a card to a fan, or sign a ball that we can give to some of our donors. So cool. Everything's perfectly permissible with what we're doing. Your earlier question was about this new kind of bomb that was dropped on the NCAA from the NCAA. So there was a court case that ended up in an injunction, and the NCAA basically came out and said, collectives, there'll be no repercussions for you to be involved in the recruiting process, for you to begin having those conversations with prospective student athletes. Prior to that moment, the directive to collectives was to not be involved in the recruiting process at all. Mm-hmm. And we've not done that. They sent out a memorandum back last January, and from that moment, we have not had any conversations with anyone until they've enrolled at Auburn. This cleans everything up a little bit. We have the opportunity to have a direct conversation with a young man or woman and his parents and their representation. We engaged with it this past week. One of our staff members met with 19 different recruits over the weekend as they were on campus. They wanted to learn more about what we do. And I think that's a great thing. I think that the way that our collective is set up, having a board of directors, having multiple full-time staff here. We have 6 full-time staff here. Mm-hmm. I think we're set up as a collective in a really good position. We're providing services and resources to our student athletes, such as allowing us to withhold taxes for them. There's just a lot of different things that set us apart from other collectives. So I think it's of great benefit to Auburn to allow us to be more involved in the recruiting process so that these men and women know what they're getting themselves into should they choose Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the importance of the education of all of this, and sure, it's important to the fans, but it's more important to the players that are now getting this money. And so, yeah, I think that is, I think that's huge. Cam, there's always a lot of talk, the transition from high school to college, and I do want to ask you about on the field stuff, but does having On to Victory kind of help with the transition of some of the off the field NIL related things?
Oh yes, sir. Especially the taxes part, because I didn't know much about taxes, but they had my back with tax part. So like really, yes, sir. They have.
Yeah, because they don't teach people about taxes in high school. They should, but they don't. They don't.
Like it was like a algebra finance class, but it wasn't like a full like it didn't give us all the tips and tricks that we needed.
Yeah, these men and women are independent contractors, and so they're getting a 1099. And so we have a mechanism in place to where we will help withhold quarterly estimations for them and then remit that to the Treasury and to the state quarterly for them. We have some financial wellness seminars. Ronnie Brown recently did that with our athletes. So we're trying to be a piece of that education that the university already does a really nice job of. They have a great curriculum over there that Cam is required to attend as a new freshman, and just different ways as we feel like we're a part of this mechanism as we all work towards building these athletes into Auburn men and women.
Cam, as far as your transition from the high school level to the college level on the field, I've seen what the media has been allowed to see so far, but it seems like you're hitting the ground running. Kind of give us an update on how spring has gone for you so far.
The spring's going good. It's always room for improvement. I'm always working with me and the team. I'm always seeing constructive criticism from Camden Brown, Coy, Robert Lewis. What they've really been all just pointing to me, make sure I've been, getting extra, like knowing the plays, and really just like from the standpoint of just like take me under their wing and just showing me the ways around. But it's going good so far.
Yeah, who's the leader in that wide receiver room? Is it one of the upperclassmen you just mentioned?
Yes, sir. I really say all the leaders are really Coy, Camden Brown, and Robert Lewis. They're all good leaders.
Okay, Got it. And as far as, fitting into Hugh Freeze's offense and now Derek Nix taking over as the offensive coordinator, how is the offense kind of standing out to you as far as schematically and learning the playbook and all of that?
Yeah, so it's similar to what I ran in high school because under Patrick Nix, we run the RPO offense. So, like, we're an RPO style offense. And it's really like similar to what I've been doing, but it's just terminology different, yardage different, depth with my yards different. But it's really been a good adjustment up to this point.
Sure. Brett, as far as, giving On to Victory and supporting these student athletes, I mean, I imagine there's a little bit more excitement right now just because fans are seeing, okay, football practice is back. Yeah. This really impressive recruiting class that Cam Coleman was obviously a part of is here. The future of Auburn football is very bright. Have we seen an uptick as far as, Auburn fans wanting to support and get involved with On to Victory?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're getting to that point, right, through all of our education and all of our messaging and all of our marketing, that people are starting to realize on the field, on the court, success, recruiting success. A lot of it has to do with the success of the collective. And my earlier point that over 98% of our revenue is coming from individual donations, that shows that the people who are involved in this, they're having a direct impact in the recruiting on our football program, on what will come on the field, what is currently going on, winning the SEC tournament in basketball. Every one of those athletes are on an NIL deal with us. And it was all really important to them for them to enroll at Auburn. And it will be very important as we work towards trying to keep them at Auburn.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time. Before we wrap up, Brett, how can people check out On to Victory, what all the perks they get if they become an OTV member and everything that goes along with that so they can support athletes like Cam and the rest of his teammates?
Absolutely. Going to owntovictory.com. That's the best way. You can see the various ways you can get involved, what each individual tier will allow you to do. Being an On to Victory member will give you access to perks and opportunities to interact with our student athletes. As I mentioned, the A-Day event that's coming up here Saturday morning. But owntovictory.com, that's how you can check it out. And just hope that everyone will get involved in some way.
All right, we talked Cruton and how NIL could impact recruiting, even specifically as much as this last weekend. That's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by Nissan. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys were able to take it to the next level. The Auburn Tigers can only be described as a Nissan Pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have created a lane for themselves after claiming the top spot in the SEC as they knocked off the Florida Gators in the SEC tournament and get that 4th seed and take on Yale later this week. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed or a 4 seed that shouldn't be a 4 seed, should be better. It's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Auburn. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Joining us now, Brian Smith, Locked On Recruiting Insider. Of course, our Locked On Recruiting coverage is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Brian, there were a bunch of kids on campus last week at Auburn. You talked to a lot of them. It sounds like there was a DJ playing music very loudly. It sounds like there were food trucks everywhere. Give us the overall environment that Hugh Freeze and this staff created for these visitors this past weekend.
Well, when you walk up to the football facility and I was walking up, I'm like, oh, that's where they're putting all the food. Like before it even got started, I'm like, wow, they had like 4 or 5 food trucks lined up.
Yeah.
And I get up there and I go inside and the DJ starts setting up outside. And I'm like, DJ, this is not a normal recruiting weekend. They're going all out. I talked to some of the people about what they had set up. They had a tent for everybody. They spent a whole bunch of money to make sure everybody, current players, parents of recruits all had a good time.
Yeah.
They went and watched practice. You actually talked to us for a little bit on Saturday. And then we came out there and just recruits just yapping it up about what they saw. And there was one common theme, and that's, they wanted to see what these guys are like when they're coaching in the moment and they're just standing there watching a critical practice. Like Saturdays, if people that don't know, that's usually scrimmage kind of stuff. It's a little more serious. That's just the way the spring ball works.
Heavier, more physical,
yes.
100%. Yeah.
So, and everybody was excited about it. So it was positive from that perspective. And then they all went in individually. They had it set up like the order and all that to go meet with Coach Freeze. And they came out and they talked to the media and just kind of hung out. It was like, even after you interviewed somebody, like you could be standing outside by one of the food trucks, everybody just talking. It was like a social event.
Yeah.
It was really cool. I've never been to anything like that ever. So it was really cool and everybody had a blast.
Kind of matches the whole family feel, that I think they're trying to build at Auburn too. So it matches. I think it makes sense. You mentioned you talked to several of these recruits. Give us a few, conversations that you had that maybe stood out to you. Maybe the kid themselves, or maybe something they specifically said. What stood out from Saturday?
When I asked Alvin Henderson, like timeline for decision, back. Yeah, I mean he's about as talented as it gets in the country. He's from Elba, Alabama. For those that don't know, little town in South Alabama. He told me he could make a decision soon, and I think everybody expects it to be Auburn, but he does have one OB set up with Miami, and he might take a couple trips. But like Auburn is trending hard there, and I don't think Alvin's really trying to hide that. Mm-hmm. But he's been to Auburn so many times, except for the food trucks out front. There wasn't much he didn't already know, and he kind of told me that often. Like, I've been here. He's probably lost track, legitimately.
He's here a ton, yeah, right.
So that was good news. Zion Grady really likes it, and everybody that's committed, like Autry's recruiting him. He talked about that with us in the media and stuff. I didn't know where Zion's head was. He's the hardest to figure. He's a pretty quiet kid, but he likes Auburn more than I thought. That was pretty obvious. And talking to Autry, he thinks they got a great shot at him. And for those that don't know, he's a dude. So that's
Brian, give us a quick snapshot of Zion Grady.
6'4", 225, runs like a deer, hits people hard. That's the best. That's the basic thing that you're looking for. But he's an edge guy. Okay. He's the guy that you can't teach. You got to have certain God-given abilities, or it just doesn't work. And Auburn is definitely losing number 35 after this year. So there's playing time available, and I'm sure they have more than made that abundantly clear that he has a chance for playing time as a freshman, and it's legit. So I think that if you got him to go on with Falk, I mean, that would be about as A+ as you could possibly get at that spot. Jared Smith was on campus. He was cool. He was hanging out in the weight room and stuff. Like he kind of feels like he's just there. Like he was really, really relaxed, and they just had everybody on campus just happy. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Was there any? I guess this would have been 2 days after Tavares Dice publicly committed to the Auburn Tigers. Was there any kind of positive energy from that as far as, talk with the offensive lineman? Because I know, is it DeBose that you spoke to?
I spoke with him as well. Yeah. That's Ohio State, LSU, Auburn picked the order. Like we tried to get him to give an order, and he struggled with it. Yeah. DeBose is a good kid, but he's from Mobile, and he's being recruited by pretty much everybody. Auburn is right there. But he originally, this is an interesting thing. I think a lot of people thought he was going to decide early. He has backed off of that, and he said he's going to take a while, which is probably smart because he's struggling to figure out where he wants to go. Which
take your time. There's no rush. All of those programs will still want you in 6 or 7 months.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
100%. So something that we talked about with Brett Whiteside of On to Victory earlier in the show, Brian, with the legal rules. I guess legal rules are called laws. I'll use words correctly. I guess with the law change in regards to NIL now being able to be used as a recruitment tool, which we can all kind of roll our eyes and scoff and speculate on how involved folks were with NIL before or after this law. That's not the conversation I really want to have here. But as far as it sounds like it almost changes the structure of the visit a little bit. They said that they met with 19 kids this past weekend. On the Victory did, and discussed, what NIL packages look like at Auburn. How do you see that impacting, one, visits, and two, just overall recruiting at the college level?
I think it's really intelligent because, like, many times I can be at an event on the sidelines at a game or whatever, and kids, NIL comes up one way or the other, whether or they bring it up. If you present to them in an open-minded fashion that, hey, this is how it works, these are the things we can do, these are the companies that we've worked with, Under Armour, et cetera, whatever it may be, it's going to put you in a more positive position. And if you do it in your house while the kid's having a good time, you just met with Freeze or right before whatever, it just makes sense from a linear standpoint too. I think Auburn did themselves, and really honestly, the recruits a favor, because I'm not sure all schools have figured this out. Because I highly doubt many schools really want to talk about it publicly. It's like taboo, but everybody uses NIL. So it's goofy.
The Victory has been by the book every step of the way. I mean, the last big change was it's not a donation. Like, it's not a tax deductible donation. And Auburn is like, we've never done that. We've never done, and a lot of collectives did, and they had to kind of change their books and change how they were doing things. I mean, Auburn has been very by the book with this. On to Victory has been very by the book with this. And so it doesn't surprise me that really the first true weekend with a lot of visits where this new law was in place, they kind of were able to say, hey, this is the rule. Let's play by the new rule that continues to shift day in and day out. So I think that's great for On the Victory. I think it's, like you said, it's great. It's great for everybody involved, because the more information that everybody has, the more likely they're going to be able to be happy with all the decisions, and everybody's going to be on the same page. I'm all for it, and I'm glad that they went ahead and they're making this change as soon as the law changed. I think that's huge for On the Victory, and I think it's huge for Auburn.
I think it's a winner, like you said, for everybody, and it's going to make the process smoother because of kids wondering, well, if I take this, am I going to get in trouble? They're laying out the A, B, and C for the kids who have no business reading law stuff, period.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff, and I think Auburn sitting down with them and educating them, even if they don't pick Auburn, it's going to help all of them. I mean, I just can't imagine. Like, I was working at a yogurt place when I was in high school, and it's like, the taxes were taken out or whatever, but these kids are all, contracted employees. So I mean, they're offering like tax education, which I think
very important.
It's so important. Because none of these kids are about to make, a lot of these kids are about to make like real money, and they're not going to know what to do with all of that. So yeah, props to them for that level of education. All right, Brian, you were at Auburn's practice earlier this week. I want to get your thoughts, pick your brain about that. I was unable to go due to an illness that had just wrecked my household, but we're on the mend. We're coming up. So I want to get your thoughts on that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV has it all, whether it's sports, whether it's entertainment. They have you covered from opening weekend for baseball, that college basketball tournament that's obviously going on. You're going to want to have a Fire TV. They recently created Fire TV channels. Locked On has one. It's just 24/7 fresh content for your eyeballs and your ears. Keep you up to date with everything. So if you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Brian Smith hanging out with us as he does every single week here on Locked On Auburn. You were at Auburn's practice earlier this week. The biggest thing that stood out to you was what?
I would say just the competitiveness of the DBs, like with the receivers. I knew Auburn had some pretty good defensive backs, but I mean, they also lost some. They did a really good job of playing zone, man, whatever they did. And they're putting a lot of stuff in defensively. You talked about that earlier in the day. He's like, some of the things we want to run, he goes, I know when we go to the line of scrimmage, we're about to get murdered because they're in a blitz package that they haven't seen before. Because you got to install it. He goes, it is what it is. But they executed. If the receiver or the quarterback made a mistake, the ball went the other way. The defense is a little better than I thought it would be at this stage, especially, and I'll just shoot directly here, defensive tackle is a problem at Auburn until otherwise proven. They're going to have to come up with turnovers and key stops in situations like that. And anytime the team is careless with the football, it can't be a drop. It has to be a pick. Those kinds of things if Auburn's going to be successful. And there were a couple of plays that it wasn't even necessarily a bad play by Auburn's offense. It's just like the DBs just won out. So now Cam had a post pattern for a touchdown and stuff. He runs by guys. That's what Cam Coleman does.
Yeah.
Those kind of things happen. But by and large, I think the defensive backs are better than what I thought they'd be. The offensive line run blocks a little better than I thought. Passing game, though, I know this is what all Auburn fans want to talk about. It is a long, long way from where it needs to be.
Yeah, and it's early spring. It's a new offense. Whatever. Like I'm not pushing the panic button on that yet, especially when you're relying on, Cam Coleman has been a college athlete for 5 seconds. Robert Lewis, who, more and more people mention, the more I talk to folks, like he's going to be a part of this. He's been here for 5 minutes as well. So I'm just not too concerned about it. Then Perry Thompson, obviously Malcolm Simmons, they're going to get here in the summer. You got to think that they're going to be a part of this passing attack somehow, some way. So I'm just not too worried about the passing game to an extent. Like I do think there's a ceiling on it, just given personnel and the age of some of the guys that are going to need to be involved in it. But I don't think the floor is as low as it was a year ago right now.
No. Like I tell you this all the time. When I looked up at the scoreboard and saw 20 yards in the Iron Bowl game at halftime passing, I about gasped and just fell over. They'll be better this year. It's just not going to be where fans want it to be. It's not going to be a top 50 passing off. It's not. Fairweather is a really talented player. Coleman is. We'll see how fast, Kane and some of these other guys can adjust. But as you noted, somebody of that upper echelon experience level, meaning junior, senior, fifth-year senior, one of those guys got to be a dude. Yeah. Not just good, because Coleman quickly is going to get double teamed. They're going to take him out of the mix. I'm telling you right now, that's going to happen. You got to find somebody else to throw the ball to. And Fairweather,
you think he has that kind of an impact as a freshman? Like you think
by the middle of the year, the first couple of games, he's going to do some stupid stuff. It's going to happen. But he'll also take the ball off somebody's head and make SportsCenter's highlights.
Right.
You have to put him on the field. This is awkward as it sounds. This season offensively is like a big practice because they have so many inexperienced players. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but if you looked at like the NFL draft for Auburn's offense, I'd bet you 7 out of the top 10 players have freshman or sophomore eligibility right now. You know what I mean? Conservatively 6. Young on offense is tough because everybody's going to be on the same page. You can have one guy on defense wreck a play, but offensively, you usually need a lot of cohesion. It's just harder. So I think that Auburn's offensive line is much better now that they've got a year under the belt for, lose at center, et cetera. And they got really lucky to get Percy, by the way. That's another key thing. Like that's a mountain
tackle.
Yeah, he's a mountain, bro. That is a flat out SEC offensive tackle. That's what Auburn should have.
Seems like just a good, chill guy too.
He is.
We got to talk to him last week, and he's just
he's
like
the guy you want to sit down and have some nachos and a beer with. You know what I mean? Like he's really cool.
That's right. Brian, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
auburndaily.com. That is a rather fun site for you and I.
Agreed.
I'll put up my thoughts, all that stuff that we just talked about a second ago in more detail in an article this morning, also at FBScout_Florida. Look, there's going to be some random stuff coming up with recruiting over the next few weeks and the big game, the Auburn spring game. There will be a gazillion recruits there that I'll be covering. So looking forward to that because everybody has some place to go that day. You'll find out how interested kids are if they go to your spring game and not somebody else's.
That's right. And we'll have all that coverage at auburndaily.com. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.